What if I told you that the most intimidating motorcycle on the road is not a Ducati, not a Kawasaki, not even a BMW? What if I told you the bike that makes people freeze at traffic lights is a Harley? Not a classic chrome Harley, not a loud, shiny cruiser, but a dark, silent, low-slung machine that looks like it escaped from a military lab. This is not a motorcycle. This is a custom Harley V-Rod muscle bike. And today, you're about to see why this machine terrifies superbikes, embarrasses sports cars, and rewrote what a Harley could be. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this bike doesn't need speed to dominate the road. It only needs presence. Beat. Let's begin. For decades, Harley-Davidson had a problem. They were legends, but only in one world. Cruisers, highways, chrome, slow torque, old school style. Harleys were respected, but they weren't feared. Young riders wanted speed. They wanted technology. They wanted something that felt modern. Dangerous. Futuristic. Harley had image, but it was an image stuck in time. And then something radical happened. Harley did something that almost destroyed their brand. They built a liquid-cooled, high-revving, drag-racing muscle motorcycle. They called it the V-Rod, the birth of the V-Rod. The V-Rod wasn't built in America. It was built with Porsche engineers in Germany. That alone made Harley fans furious. A German-engineered Harley? Liquid cooling? Overhead cams? High RPM? This wasn't Harley. But Harley knew something. The world was changing, and they either change with it or become history. So they created the Revolution engine, Oven 3cc, later 1250c. Liquid-cooled, 60-degree V-twin, built to rev higher than any Harley before it. And when they put it in the V-Rod, everything changed. This Harley was fast, 0-60 in under 3.5 seconds. Quarter mile under 11 seconds. That was superbike territory. But speed wasn't the V-Rod's real weapon. Its weapon was intimidation. Low, long, wide. Like a mechanical predator crawling on the road. And that's when builders saw its true potential. Why custom builders fell in love. The V-Rod wasn't just a bike. It was a blank canvas for brutality. Builders realized this wasn't a cruiser. This was a muscle bike hiding inside Harley's skin. So they began transforming it. Lowered suspension, fat rear tires, short exhausts, dark paint, wide bars, twin headlights. They stripped the shine. They removed the nostalgia. They removed the past. And they created something new. A bike that didn't look fast. It looked inevitable. Like it would catch you no matter what you rode. Like it didn't chase, it hunted. Why this bike feels so scary? Here's why the V-Rod feels more intimidating than a superbike. Superbikes scream. They rev high. They demand attention. The V-Rod doesn't scream. It growls. It sits low like a panther. Wide rear tire like a loaded shoulder. The engine pulses instead of screams. It feels heavy. It feels solid. It feels unstoppable. A superbike says, "I'm fast." This says, "I don't need to be fast." That psychological effect is powerful. That's why people stare. That's why cars slow down. That's why riders feel small next to it. It dominates space. And humans instinctively respect things that dominate space. Why it beats superbikes in the real world. On paper, a superbike is faster. But in the real world, traffic, corners, bad roads, people. The V-Rod doesn't need perfect roads. It thrives on imperfect roads. Torque from idle. Instant power. No need to downshift. Twist the throttle. And the world moves backward. You don't ride it, you command it. And that feeling, that's addictive. The engine that shouldn't exist. Harley engines were never supposed to rev high. They were never supposed to be precise. They were never supposed to be surgical. They were supposed to be loud, rough, emotional. But the Revolution engine was different. This engine was built by Porsche engineers who were obsessed with efficiency, heat management, and reliability at high RPM. It had liquid cooling, 4 valves per cylinder, overhead cams, tight tolerances, balanced internals. This meant something revolutionary. This Harley could be abused. You could rev it hard. You could push it for long distances. You could ride it aggressively without it overheating or complaining. It didn't feel fragile like some high-strung superbikes. It felt industrial, like it was designed for punishment. Why it was discontinued. If the V-Rod was so good, why did Harley kill it? Because it was too different. Traditional Harley fans hated it. They said, it's not a real Harley. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't shake. It doesn't feel alive. But younger riders loved it. It attracted new people, but alienated the old ones. And Harley was afraid of losing its loyal base. So in 2017, they ended the V-Rod. And in doing so, they accidentally created a cult classic, the cult of the V-Rod. When production stopped, something strange happened. Demand went up. Prices stabilized. Custom builders started hoarding them. Forums exploded. Instagram pages were born. Dedicated V-Rod garages appeared. Why? Because people realized this was the last Harley that tried to evolve. It wasn't nostalgic. It wasn't retro. It wasn't safe. It was experimental. And humans love forbidden things, especially when they're mechanical. Why muscle bikes hit different? Superbikes stimulate the brain. Muscle bikes stimulate the soul. Speed excites you. Power calms you. Torque feels like authority. It doesn't beg. It doesn't scream. It simply moves the world. That's why trucks feel powerful. That's why muscle cars feel dominant. That's why the V-Rod feels different. It doesn't say, look at me. It says, watch what happens next. Famous builds that changed everything. One builder lowered the V-Rod until the exhaust scraped. Another put a 300mm rear tire on it. Another added a turbo. Another turned it into a stealth fighter. Flat black. No chrome, no shine. No branding. Just shape. Just mass. Just threat. They turned a motorcycle into a character. And once a machine becomes a character, it becomes legendary. The psychology of fear and respect. Humans evolved to respect large, low, wide shapes. Bears, bulls, gorillas, big cats. They all share one visual trait. They dominate horizontal space. Superbikes dominate vertically, tall, sharp, pointed. The V-Rod dominates horizontally, wide, low, stretched. Your brain reads that as power. That's why the bike feels intimidating before it even moves. Why riders fall in love. People don't fall in love with specs. They fall in love with feelings. The V-Rod gives control, stability, presence, authority. It makes riders feel grounded. It makes them feel heavy. It makes them feel untouchable. It doesn't hype you. It centers you. That's why V-Rod riders rarely switch back. The future of muscle bikes. Electric bikes will be faster. AI will be smarter. But humans will still crave machines that feel physical, heavy, mechanical, alive. The V-Rod represents the last era of physical dominance. Before everything became digital, that's why it will age well. That's why it will be remembered. Real riders, real roads. Let's leave the studio. Let's leave the specs. Let's go to the street, because that's where this bike becomes something else. A rider in Arizona says, I've owned leader bikes. I've owned a Hayabusa, but nothing made me feel present like this. Another in Dubai says, when I ride this, people don't ask me how fast it is. They ask me what it is. Another in Germany. It doesn't feel like a motorcycle. It feels like a moving object with gravity. Every rider describes the same thing. It doesn't excite, it anchors. Drag races that shouldn't be possible. On a closed drag strip, a stock V-Rod lines up next to a tuned Yamaha R1. Everyone bets on the R1. The light goes green. The R1 launches hard. The V-Rod launches harder. For the first 60 feet, the Harley leads. Because torque doesn't wait for RPM. Torque is instant. The R1 passes later, but the memory stays. Because humans remember the beginning of a story more than the end. And the V-Rod always wins the beginning. Why it's not about winning. People don't ride muscle bikes to win. They ride them to feel. To feel the engine push them. To feel the road push back. To feel weight transfer. To feel presence. A superbike feels like flying. The V-Rod feels like driving a train. Both are powerful, but only one feels unstoppable. Comparison versus superbikes. Superbike. Fast, light, sharp, nervous, exciting. V-Rod. Heavy, stable, calm, deep, dominant. Superbike shouts. V-Rod whispers. And whispers are often more dangerous. Why Hollywood loves muscle bikes. Hollywood doesn't use superbikes for villains. They use muscle bikes. Because villains don't run, they approach. They don't rush, they arrive. The V-Rod looks like a rival. It looks like consequence. That's why it fits villains. That's why it fits anti-heroes. That's why it fits powerful characters. The bike as an extension of identity. People choose bikes that match how they see themselves. Superbike riders see themselves as fast. Cruiser riders see themselves as relaxed. V-Rod riders see themselves as controlled, not aggressive, not loud, just certain. That identity is rare. That's why the community is small, but deeply loyal. Why this bike changed Harley forever, even though Harley killed it. They learned from it. They learned younger riders want performance. They learned design can evolve. They learned nostalgia isn't enough. That led to the Pan America, the Sportster S, the Nightster, all spiritual descendants of the V-Rod. It walked so others could run. The moment you realize, there's a moment every V-Rod rider remembers. Not when they buy it, not when they start it, but when they stop, they park it, they walk away, they turn around, and they look back. Because something about this machine doesn't let you leave easily. It doesn't feel like an object. It feels like something that's waiting. And that's when you realize you didn't buy a bike. You adopted a force. Machines we respect. We respect machines that survive time, that don't beg for attention, that don't age badly, that don't follow trends. The V-Rod didn't follow trends. It ignored them. That's why it looks modern even today, because it was never fashionable. It was intentional. Why it feels alive. A machine feels alive when it has mass, movement, resistance. The V-Rod has all three. You feel its weight. You feel its pull. You feel its pushback. It doesn't disappear beneath you like a superbike. It stays present, like a partner, like a companion, like a thing with a will. The philosophy of power. Real power is quiet. It doesn't need proof. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need speed. It needs certainty. The V-Rod embodies that. It doesn't chase. It doesn't compete. It doesn't compare. It simply exists, and the world adjusts around it. Why it will never be for everyone. This bike isn't for beginners. It isn't for racers. It isn't for collectors. It's for people who know what they want, and that's a small group, but it's a powerful one. The legacy. The V-Rod will never be the fastest bike. It will never be the lightest. It will never be the most advanced, but it will always be remembered because it dared. It dared to be different in a world of sameness. It dared to confuse. It dared to upset. It dared to evolve. And that's how legends are born. Final scene. Slow cinematic voice. A road at sunset. The bike idle pulses. Heat rises from the engine. The rider doesn't move. The world moves around him. Cars pass. People stare. The bike remains. Not fast. Not slow. Just inevitable. Outro call to action. If you believe motorcycles should be more than speed, if you believe machines should have personality, if you believe power should feel like gravity, then you already understand this bike. And if you don't, that's okay. Not everyone is meant to. Final line. This was never a superbike. This was something else. This was a muscle bike. This was the Harley V-Rod. Speed is temporary. Presence is permanent.